Hello, I'm Esther Gidhui Yuwat. It's Thursday, July 20th. This is Africa 54.
Opposition protesters in Kenya demonstrate against tax hikes and the high cost of living. The United Nations says millions of hungry people in West Africa are without food as the region faces a dire hunger crisis. And in the United States, Messi mania grips Florida as football superstar Lionel Messi arrives in Miami. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54.
We begin our broadcast in East Africa, where Kenyan police say they have been ordered not to report deaths amid demonstrations against the rising cost of living. Police in Kenya have long been accused by rights groups of using excessive force. Now there is growing concern about tactics used under the administration of President William Ruto. An independent watchdog says at least 6 people were shot dead by police on Wednesday and claims that at least 27 were shot dead in such protests earlier this year. It was not immediately clear who issued the order. The official spoke on condition of anonymity because they weren't authorized to speak publicly, according to the Associated Press. The Interior Ministry says more than 300 people were arrested during Wednesday's protests for looting, destroying property, and assaulting police. For insight into Kenya's protests, I spoke to David Onserio Monda, a political science professor at City University of New York, and I began by asking him what impact the protests have on Kenya's image abroad and how President William Ruto and opposition leader Raila Odinga can bring the mayhem to an end.
I think both of them need to get together and have a conversation about how to fix the contentious issues they have. One was the 2023 Budget Act that was passed in Parliament. The second one is the reforms to the IEBC. And then the other elements of the 1.5% housing tax. I think that's a part of another problem. And then the commissioners who were removed from the IEBC.
In the longer term, what are the economic implications of these protests for Kenya?
Every day the country is losing about 30 million US dollars just in the Metro Nairobi area. Also the high levels of inflation globally, the weakening of the Kenya shilling, and the rising prices of oil because of the Ukraine-Russia crisis and some of the reduction in oil production from the Middle East. I think all of these internal and external economic factors are really going to be a challenge and will really be something that the government really needs to resolve very quickly because the situation is getting out of hand.
Professor, what do you think will be the immediate and long-term political implications of this unrest?
I think the immediate implications is both of these sides will continue to challenge each other. There'll be a very dangerous game of brinkmanship. So in the short term, I can really see that the opposition will have to come to the table and talk to the government because, the opposition cannot beat the government in terms of its capacity to use the institutions of the state to keep power. The government will always have an upper hand because they have the police, they have the army, they have the government resources. But I think in the long term, I think this is something that we really need to think about. How do we create a constitutional framework so that losers of elections also feel they have a part to play in the development of the country? But also we need to create these norms, right? So that when politicians lose elections, they can gracefully leave the political stage and not feel they're being humiliated, that they can also do other positive things in our society, whether it's lecturing at the university, setting up foundations, encouraging other issues, say, around regional peace. I think, an elder statesman like Raila Odinga would be very helpful in terms of that. For example, thinking about the problems we have in the DRC or places like Sudan. So I think in the short term, again, we really need to think about how do we reform our electoral system so losers of elections feel it's not a winner-take-all, that the government takes everything and wins and the opposition feels humiliated. But then in the long run, what do we do with our politicians who've been in politics for so long and still feel that they can contribute? Is there a space which we can create for them to also become productive? Because this politics of brinkmanship and antagonism, I think, is really hurting the country. And it's not a problem just in Kenya. I think it's an African phenomenon when we really think about our opposition parties. They haven't really thought about a way to which they can really be a loyal opposition to the government and contribute positively. It's usually a lot of antagonism, which leads to these demonstrations, which leads to loss of life and destruction of property.
That was David Onserio Monda, a political science professor at City University of New York. Airstrikes, street battles and artillery fire shook Sudan's capital Khartoum and the major southern city of El Obeid on Thursday, according to El Obeid residents. Army jets were striking paramilitaries who responded with anti-aircraft fire. In Khartoum South, witnesses reported 3 air raids in the early morning. VOA's Anthony Labruto spoke to Ragdan Al-Soud, founder of Beam Reports, a Sudanese exclusive community group of data journalists, media verifiers, and stringers who help contextualize and fact-check government statements, international media, and widely circulated online claims from Instagram, Facebook, and WhatsApp.
We have utilized tech to be able to respond very quickly, but we also wanted to make sure that we utilize the resources that were already existing and traditional, which is people on the ground. So since Beam started, we made sure that we build networks as we go. So for example, we have a wide network of people who are helping us fact-checking. We focus on citizen journalism, to sum it up. So Beam is very approachable if you want to send us pieces to be verified. We have a WhatsApp account for that where people just send us stuff on the go. Our DMs are all open for that, and we have an inbox that is usually regularly monitored as well for investigative pieces. But what we have realized through the trust that we were able to build, a lot of people were sending us the rumor plus the info to respond to it. Our team, of course, would take that, look into it, verify it, and then if it's correct, we would publish. And it just got us to a place where we're able to respond very quickly, just because there is a team that is tech-savvy, that sits in the office and that is doing all this fact-checking. We have presence on the ground who are helping us and understand why we're doing this. So a lot of what we do as well is media literacy and building awareness of why this is important. And I think that was very successful, and it resulted in a lot of people helping us respond as we go. One of the uniquenesses about Beam is that it's fully Sudanese. It started by Sudanese money, Sudanese co-founders, Sudanese managers, Sudanese everything.
That was Ragdan Al-Soud, founder of Beam Reports, speaking to VOA's Anthony Labruto. The United Nations Food Agency says millions of hungry people in West Africa are without food aid because the region is struggling with limited funding to respond to its worst hunger crisis in 10 years. VOA's Paul Ndiho has more.
Like many African countries, Nigeria is struggling to keep up with its local wheat production. The issue of wheat and food insecurity has reached a critical point. According to the African Development Bank, the Russian invasion of Ukraine triggered a shortage of about 30 million tons of grain on the continent. Ongoing insecurity in the northern regions, where most grains are grown, are hindering the country's progress. Muhammad Abubakar, a local wheat seller, says that due to the scarcity of imported grains, they have resorted to selling locally grown ones.
We are using the local grain a lot more than the foreign grain because the local has much more starch than the foreign one.
Muda Yusuf, the director of the Center for Promotion of Private Enterprise in Lagos, sheds light on the challenges of growing wheat.
The first thing that needs to be done is to tackle the problem of insecurity. Because without security, there's very little you can do about food production. Because the most vulnerable segments of society that has been affected by this insecurity are the farmers.
Ukraine had planned to send more wheat at lower prices. However, Russia's withdrawal from a UN-brokered accord permitting Ukraine to export grains from the Black Sea is casting doubt over its initiative's success.
Wheat is largely a temperate crop. We are in the tropics. So we need the kind of seedlings that can perform well in our own kind of climatic condition.
Experts emphasize that rising food prices have a disproportionate impact on developing countries that rely on imported food priced in dollars, face additional challenges as their currencies weaken and climate change forces them to increase their imports. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
The suspension of the Black Sea grain initiatives is likely to exacerbate what is already a terrible situation, according to Michael Dunford, the World Food Programme Regional Director for Eastern Africa. Christy Kilburn explains.
The World Food Programme is warning food insecurity in Eastern Africa will only get worse after Russia pulled out of the UN-brokered grain deal. The deal allowed Ukraine to safely export grain through the Black Sea, and aid agencies say its collapse will hit some of the world's poorest countries the hardest. Michael Dunford is the WFP's Eastern Africa director.
This is going to make our ability to feed hungry people that much more difficult. Already, there are 80 million people in the region who are acutely food insecure. A whole range of factors are driving that. It's conflict, it's climate, it's the economic shocks, and of course it's the hangover from COVID. This suspension of the initiative will just exacerbate what is already a terrible situation.
On top of all that, Dunford says the Sudan conflict adds a layer of difficulty to providing aid in the region. The war has led to the displacement of more than 3 million people, including more than 700,000 who have crossed into neighboring countries.
We've never seen the region at such a high risk as it is today. In fact, at the beginning of the year, we were saying that the region was on fire. In light of what's now happening in Sudan and the other factors that are playing out, it feels like the region's actually been doused with petrol and the fire is now out of control.
On Tuesday, the United Nations said it would continue to push for a solution.
The Secretary General will continue to explore all possible avenues to ensure that Ukrainian grain, Russian grain, and Russian fertilizer are out into the global market. That is a determination of his. There are a number of ideas being floated.
The Black Sea grain deal was brokered by the UN and Turkey last July to combat a global food crisis worsened by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Ukraine and Russia are among the world's top grain exporters.
Christy Kilburn of Reuters filed that report. Zimbabwe's main opposition party, the Citizens Coalition for Change, is turning to door-to-door campaigning ahead of next month's election. They say police are refusing its applications for public rallies. Police acknowledge turning down a number of opposition rallies, but say they are also refusing requests to rally from the ruling party. Columba's Mavunga has more from Harare.
Members of Zimbabwe's main opposition party, the Citizens Coalition for Change, or CCC, stamp door-to-door for their leader, Nelson Chamisa, in a Harare suburb. They tell voter Tapiwa Mashamba where his polling station will be on election day, August 23. He says their meeting was important.
I didn't know my polling station. Plus I didn't know how to check my polling station in the phone. They told me, and it was very important. Now I know how to check my polling station. I can also tell someone how to check their polling station.
CCC members say they started going door to door after police refused to approve most of their rallies. One of the campaigners is Denford Ngadziore, who is seeking re-election as a Harare City Councillor. He says the new strategy is actually yielding better results than rallies that require police clearance, which party members say is hard to come by.
You need to get approval from the police if you are more than 15. And currently we are doing this program, we are 14 people. We are engaging voters in the group of 3, going into each and every street, house by house, person to person. So it's very effective more than a rally.
Police refute accusations they are blocking CCC rallies. They say the CCC has applied for 347 rallies since January, and fewer than 50 have been turned down for security concerns or other reasons. Police say the ruling ZANU-PF party has asked for permission to hold about 1,400 rallies, and more than 85 have been turned down.
We are maintaining registers, including for those turned down, for those approved. So we would want people who raise allegations to justify, not to speak because they just want to justify whatever they failed to do, but to have facts, and facts where if they are alleging something against the police, facts which can be proven.
While the opposition party tests the new door-to-door campaign strategy, police are asking parties to tell the truth so the electoral process earns the credibility it deserves. Columbus Mavungam, VOA News, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Authorities in South Africa say one man has been killed and at least 48 people are injured, some of them seriously, after a suspected underground gas explosion. The blast ripped apart roads and flipped over vehicles in the heart of Johannesburg. Officials say the man's body was found downtown by firefighters under a vehicle after the blast during evening rush hour on Wednesday. The exact cause of the blast is under investigation after the company supplying gas to that part of the city says it does not believe its underground pipelines were responsible. We'd like to hear what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, football superstar Lionel Messi prepares to make his Miami debut. We'll be right back.
Research shows that Africa has the highest number of women entrepreneurs globally. Women remain massively underrepresented in venture capital investment compared to their male counterpart. On this week's episode of Our Voices, we examine why African women on the continent and in the diaspora continue to face challenges in securing funds to start their businesses. We speak to experts on what women need to do to succeed in their ventures. Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices.
In times of change, when the world seems uncertain and what we hear doesn't reflect what we see, we seek the truth. When we are told only part of the story, we lose trust. In moments of crisis, our dreams, hopes, and wishes for a better tomorrow depends on a free press. At Voice of America, we bring you the stories that people take risks to see. We connect the world and unite it with truth. At Voice of America, we show you the whole picture.
In other news, fuel stations in Malawi's economic capital, Blantyre, are empty after a new nationwide fuel shortage this week. Long lines of motorists are waiting for hours in hopes of filling up their vehicles, while public transportation fares have doubled. Malawi's energy regulator says the nation has depleted its fuel reserves, largely due to a lack of foreign currency. The recent alleged assault on South Sudanese State Representative Okello Odongto by unidentified security personnel is raising concern among lawmakers in Juba over harassment by security operatives. Odongto alleges the assault also included theft of personal belongings and accusations of possessing undisclosed foreign currency. And the 2023 FIFA Women's World Cup is underway Thursday in Australia and New Zealand amid ongoing complaints by female athletes calling out unequal pay and bonuses. Nigeria's Super Falcons and Australia's Matildas are among the teams that have approached their national football federations and FIFA to express unhappiness over unpaid bonuses and prize money. Sierra Leone's new parliament will have the largest female representation in the country's history, with 41 women lawmakers, more than double the last election. But advocates say too many districts still fell below the 30% required by law. Senanu Todd reports from Port Loko, Sierra Leone.
Rujiatu Neneturi entered politics in 2007, mainly to advocate against female genital mutilation. After one term on a local council, she says her political party refused to give her another seat on 3 different occasions. In one election for 2 council seats, she says she won the second highest number of votes, but her party put a man in the seat after the election.
I've always made the vote, but the leadership doesn't think I fit into the criteria as they want, because I am not act like somebody who cannot be vain, and somebody they consider to say, she not just accept things,
Female activists in Sierra Leone say that kind of manipulation is keeping the number of women in office down, even after President Julius Maada Bio in January signed a Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment Act, or GEWE, which requires that women hold 30% of all publicly elected seats and government leadership roles. Before the most recent elections, Sierra Leone's parliament had just 12% female representation, well below the global average of 26.4%, as tracked by the Interparliamentary Union's Women in Parliament Index. In the government cabinet, only 4 of 32 cabinet positions were held by women, also far below the global average. GEWE aimed to change that. Marcella Samba Sisse is the executive director for Campaign for Good Governance in Sierra Leone. She says the law stemmed from Sierra Leone's 11-year civil war, which ended in 2002.
This was born out of the fact that a Truth and Reconciliation Commission report after the war noted that whole groups were excluded from mainstream politics and they do not know how decisions were made. And part of those groups were marginalized entities such as women and young people.
Since the implementation of GEWE this year, female lawmakers were voted into 41 of 135 parliamentary seats, more than double the number in the last parliament. Advocates have applauded the success of the bill so far, but say it is being applied unevenly. Under Sierra Leone's election system, voters cast ballots for a party, not an individual. Parties then fill the seats they've won from a ranked list of party members. Nikki Spencer-Coker, a lawyer and women's activist, says many parties place women in lower rankings, making them less likely to win seats.
Future advocacy should involve, more work directly with the political parties to ensure that they're placing women in higher up on these lists, and that they're also placing them in safe seats, not in the seats that perhaps they're going to end up, losing.
If the law had been followed properly, activists say there would be even more women in parliament. They also have concerns over parliament's leadership, as only one of the 14 parliamentary chiefs is female. Sierra Leone's Ministry of Gender told VOA in an interview that it will work to correct all the lapses in following the law, and together with the new female lawmakers, will push for more protection for female politicians. Sana Anutot for VOA News, Port Loko, Sierra Leone.
Messi mania has descended on U.S. state of Florida with the arrival of football star Lionel Messi to play for local team Inter Miami. Many fans say they hope a player of his stature will signal a new era for U.S. soccer. Veronica Villafañe narrates this story from reporters Anthony Belchi and Jose Panalete in Miami.
America's number 10, the best number 10 in the world, Lionel Andres Messi.
Argentinian soccer star Leo Messi got a memorable welcome as Inter Miami's newest and most famous member at the team's home stadium in Fort Lauderdale, just one day after he finalized signing a deal through the 2025 season. A beaming Messi said he was thrilled to join the South Florida club.
The truth is that I'm very excited, very happy to be here in Miami with you. I really want to start competing and winning.
The team's top brass, including co-owner and former soccer star David Beckham, were on hand for Messi's unveiling, alongside more than 20,000 fans. Most of those fans were from Argentina and other Latin American countries and describe his arrival in Miami as a dream come true.
I'm super excited. I still have tears in my eyes to see him. He is the best, and to have the chance to see him, to watch him, even if it's in the stands, is a thrill.
Outside the stadium, fans celebrated, with some of his Argentinian compatriots enjoying a good asado, barbecue, as if they were in Buenos Aires.
You have to enjoy it with your family, with friends. There was no way to miss this event. Look at what Messi does. He brings the family together. He gives us Argentinians joy.
Others saw an opportunity to profit from Messi's arrival to Inter Miami.
I have a lot of shirts and caps. I hope to sell a lot.
Messi mania engulfed South Florida as soon as Inter Miami announced Messi, considered to be one of the best players in the world, would move to the United States to join the team. New, large-scale murals with the star's likeness in the team's pink jersey quickly became fan attractions, like this one in Wynwood, Miami's art district. Another Messi mural in Miami, created by Venezuelan artist Arlex Campos, captures the attention of passers-by.
It has been crazy. The mural gets more than 1,500 photos a day. This project was very nice and important because we painted Messi with the Inter jersey.
Messi has already started training with his new team, which is currently last in the league's Eastern Conference. But fans are hoping Messi can turn that around. For Anthony Belchi and Jose Pernalete in Miami, Veronica Villafañe, VOA News.
That's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.